To a kidnapping and murder of an area family that happened more than 3 decades ago.
In October 1989, Jacobs was found not guilty of killing 55-year-old Kenneth Kenny Koontz after a month-long trial. The 5th of July seemed like it would be just like any other day. He got out of his caravan next to the family's house and went to the house to meet them. When he walked in, he saw that his whole family had been shot and left to bleed on the floor. He was horrified and ran to the nearest phone to call the cops. In the weeks to come, police would have a hard time finding the killer, leaving the community to wonder who would kill such a close-knit family and why. Let's have a look at the case with the most insane twists you've ever heard.
Helen was later found dead in a Taylor County swamp. A jury acquitted Jacobs of the family's death.
The Koontz family was well known for their closeness. Some considered them too near. The family lived in a run-down gray house on 108 acres, 6 miles from Bern Town Center. According to visitors, the family home and farm were always cluttered. The family cooked on a wood-burning stove and kept warm without indoor plumbing. The crowded household housed everyone Koontz except Kenneth. Kenneth lived in a caravan next door to the house for solitude. Despite their decrepit abode, the Koontz were rich. They had almost $20,000 in cash in the residence. They kept to themselves and paid bills in cash. The close-knit family wore hand-me-down clothes. Kenneth and Randy often drove their mother Helen into town to buy food and pay bills. According to a Post-Crescent report, the Koontz were treated like aliens in their hometown. Some residents liked the Koontz, but most just found them odd. A breezy July 4th evening saved the Koontz from obscurity. Kenneth awoke on July 5th, 1987, holding his head. After seeing the cheese factory, he went out for drinks with pals. Kenneth had had a few more beers and celebrated July 4th, which he regretted the next morning. Kenneth cautiously left his caravan and headed to the main house after preparing for the day. Instead of his mother, uncle, and aunt, he saw a scene that haunted him forever. Kenneth called out to his mother as the entrance door creaked. He closed the door and shouted for her. As he continued along the entryway, he suddenly froze in shock. His Aunt Marie remained motionless in a pool of blood after being shot in the head with a .22 caliber gun. Kenneth wandered the house, hoping this was all just a bad dream. He found Randy dead in the kitchen. Kenneth hurried over to resuscitate him, but it was too late. Kenneth gently searched each room for his family members. He was unsure if the offender was still inside the property, and he feared a similar fate. He found Clarence and Irene dead in their chambers. They were also suffering from .22 caliber shots. Irene was slumped in a chair, while Clarence was in his bedroom. Kenneth knew this was a surprise attack because his family had no time to react or run. Kenneth went downstairs and out the door feeling nauseous. He banged on the neighbor's door. Kenneth mumbled to ask to use their phone when someone opened the door. Kenneth's adrenaline was pounding from panic and fear. Finally, he called 911 with his neighbor. The squad cruisers, with bright lights and blaring sirens, surrounded the 108-acre Koontz farm in minutes. After briefing themselves, the investigators began their investigation. The Marathon County Sheriff's Office first contacted Kenneth. He was the one who had found his family's bodies and was the only one unharmed. Kenneth mentioned that his mother, Helen Koontz, was missing during their initial interviews. Investigators were suspicious of Kenneth's mother, who they were worried about. In the early stages of the investigation, investigators were open to many possibilities because the motivation was still unknown. In July 1987, Marathon County investigators told UPI that they wouldn't know if Helen Koontz was a victim or suspect until she was located. Would Helen really want to destroy her family and save her son? Could she have committed suicide? Could she have fled under a new name? While detectives hurried to figure out what happened on July 4th, these vital questions were put on hold. Investigators meticulously searched the Koontz residence. Their investigations stated that the home was filthy and lacked plumbing and a kitchen. The family never cleaned and never threw anything away. This puzzled investigators. The family had a profitable farm and over $20,000 in cash hidden in the house. Investigators believed the Koontz killer didn't realize how much money was around the house. After inflation, $20,000 would be over $52,000 today. Despite living in squalor, the family had a TV and a DVD player. A town-wide rumor further ostracized the family. A local hardware shop owner, Gail Whaler, told Marathon County Police that Helen had bought .22 caliber bullets weeks before the shooting. Helen said her sons Randy and Keith used the ammunition to shoot birds on the family's large farm, but that wasn't her most intriguing indication. Gail told investigators Helen complained about her family watching obscene films on the video player. The Koontz family's obscene library supported this. Disturbingly, the family had been accused of abnormal sexual behavior and incest before.
Chris Jacobs III kidnapped Helen Koontz from her Athens home back in 1987.
Kenneth also thought Clarence Koontz, Helen's brother, was his father. Helen's mother especially refuted these assertions. Over time though, more rumors surfaced. Bern residents believed Helen and her son Randy shared a bed at night, fueling Koontz incest rumors. The siblings of Clarence, Marie, and Irene slept in the living room. Townspeople wondered if the generations-old rumors of incest had finally come to a head. Speculation continued, and Helen remained missing. Even from afar, Bern supported Kenneth Koontz. Despite the family's oddities and rumors of weird and nasty behavior, the townspeople nonetheless felt the massacre's pain. After Helen's disappearance, people made "Where is Helen" t-shirts, buttons, and posters, and also helped in the search for her. Investigators learned Helen was last seen at a fireworks display in Athens, Wisconsin on July 4, 1987, one day before the slayings. Kenneth was at work at the pub, so he couldn't explain his mother's disappearance. People debated whether a 5'3" 70-year-old lady could kill her family. The Koontz family faded into the background as autumn approached, and Bern returned to usual. Investigators searched for Helen and the killer of practically her entire family. Authorities found a bizarre twist as the mystery deepened. Helen's body was found in a Taylor County, Wisconsin swamp 9 months after the massacre in April 1988. Helen's body was autopsied, but the results were never revealed. Helen temporarily stalled the investigation. The suspect had died like her family had. The Koontz family had a tragic history. Mary Koontz, Helen's grandmother, was murdered in 1905, and her son was accused and sent to a mental institution. The family later moved to Marathon County, but were swindled out of a farmland. In 1988, Christopher Jacobs III became a suspect in the Koontz family's murder investigation. Evidence found at his property linked him to the crime scene, including tire tracks and footprints. He was charged with 5 counts of murder, but released, and then charged again in August 1988. This led to Marathon County's longest investigation. A beautiful August morning greeted 22-year-old Christopher Trial Jacobs III in prison. He struggled to adjust with being told when to eat, sleep, and go. Christopher defended himself with a lawyer. Christopher's defense understood the evidence was purely circumstantial. The murder weapon was never located, and the tire tracks in his personal .22 caliber weapon were circumstantial as well. Christopher's defense attorneys prepared for months. Reporter Crocker Stevenson closely followed the case, attending court dates and observing that Christopher Jacobs had a criminal background and came from a family that victimized others. A jury from Brown County was brought in to ensure a fair trial, during which jurors viewed a graphic crime scene film, saw tire impressions from Christopher's car at the crime scene, and heard evidence that he was one of the few people to have communicated with the Koontz family. The trial was the longest inquiry in Marathon County history. The jury's ruling held the Koontz family and their supporters breathless. Christopher Jacobs III faced a lengthy term for murdering practically an entire family. The jury declared him not guilty after 10 hours of deliberation. The courtroom erupted. Christopher gasped, liberated.
One person who can do anything, that's Chris Jacobs. He can lead a life of law-abiding, upstanding, and try to contribute something back.
In 1989, Christopher Jacobs III was acquitted of murdering the Koontz family. However, in 1993, his ex-girlfriend, Stacy Weiss, told Lieutenant Randall Honish that Christopher had confessed to her. Christopher had shot Randy Koontz and the rest of his family, leaving only Helen alive. He was arrested and charged with kidnapping and murdering Helen Koontz. After a 5-year trial, Christopher was found guilty and sentenced to 31 years. He was paroled in February 2020, but rearrested at his request the next day, claiming he was innocent. He returned to prison to finish his term of 14 months. What do you think of this case? Do you think Christopher Jacobs III is guilty? Leave your comments below. For more engaging material, like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling content. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.